Good morning, everyone. On behalf of JPAL, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our chief guest and keynote speaker, the Honorable Minister of Water Supply and Drainage of Sri Lanka, Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Since 2010, Honorable Dinesh Gunawardena has been a Minister of Water Supply and Drainage, and since 2008, Chief Government Whip of Sri Lanka Parliament. The unique Kusum Nivasa project under the newly established Urban Settlement Development Authority is the brainchild of the Minister. During this time, the development and gazette of National Physical Plan, large number of development initiatives under Puja Bhumi or Sacred Areas program, initiating of over 2,000 community water projects bringing water to over 2 million Sri Lankans, building of over 5,000 houses under urban settlement improvement programs, and establishing of the National Landscape Institute were among leading milestones achieved under his purview. He is also the chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee of Electoral Reforms. Previously, he has served in the government as the Minister of Transport, Deputy Minister of Education, and Minister of Urban Development and Sacred Areas Development. He has degrees from Nyenrode Business University in the Netherlands and University of Oregon in USA. We are honored and delighted that he could join us today. I request the Minister now to deliver his keynote address.
Mr. Dhaliwal, Mr. Ban and Professor Mubarak, and other distinguished participants, friends, representing different organizations, countries, and the academia of important institutions in the US, Gates Foundation, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to convey my sincere appreciation to the Abdul Latif Jamal Poverty Action Lab, the Urban Services Initiative, and the steps taken to have this workshop in Sri Lanka, and the interest that you all have shown in South Asia, especially at a time when issues in Asia, from urban problems to rural problems, poverty to other issues of development, been discussed much more than ever before. Firstly, I would like to mention that we Asians are proud that today Asia has been regarded as the center of economic growth in the 21st century. 21st century, the growth centers are being, perhaps the fastest growth centers are being led by Asia. But that does not mean problems of Asia in relation to poverty and the poor and their problems would be all taken into consideration in this great growth that is being envisaged. So the debate is on, and governments, non-governmental organizations, as well as academia in our countries too are showing serious interest in deciding what the growth patterns, policies, programs should be. Therefore, your meeting, as well as perhaps the exchanges, as well as your observations, would be of immense value in our country's progress. Dear friends, it is a pleasure to take part in the first South Asia-wide conference organized for a new urban service initiative. This is a conference that has brought together practitioners, experts, researchers from the region and beyond. I'm indeed pleased to among such diversity of expertise, experience on an urban service delivery, particularly as the water sanitation segment is the responsibility of my ministry. Urban service delivery has been and continues to be one of the more critical challenges of our time. Water and sanitation are seen as the two major challenges in sustaining human settlements, to the extent that it is often reminded that without reliable access to safe drinking water and adequate sanitation, cities cannot be sustained. With the proliferation of urban centers and the growth of informal settlements around these centers, or strong trends of urban sprawl, as in the case of Sri Lanka, we are increasingly confronted with the realities of delivery of safe drinking water whilst ensuring proper levels of sanitation, provision of affordable housing, all equitably and efficiently. Colombo, the city of Colombo, has grown immensely. The issue of accessible to sanitation in the city of Colombo, about 10 to 11% do not have proper access to sanitation. In the city of Colombo, there's over 65,000 temporary houses or slums. The issue of this population is one growing issue that is being also, patterns are being seen in other cities in Sri Lanka. As we continue to grapple with the solutions based on large infrastructure projects, we also experience the joy of communities harnessing their cooperative strength to implement micro and medium scale solutions towards accessing basic needs, particularly in housing, the poor and the marginalized, and the water and sanitation sectors. We in Sri Lanka embarked on a community-based project for supplying of water and sanitation. Over 3,600 CBOs have had the success story of delivery, covering 2.8 million people in the country. Access to pipe-borne water has been brought about by these community-based organizations. They've also expanded into sanitation rotating fund in their own locality, thereby bringing about nearly 200,000 sanitation units, toilet units, to the families involved as members of the CBOs. Ours is indeed a region with a repository experience in implementing service delivery with pro-poor bias that underlines the participation of the poorer and the underprivileged communities in maintaining and improving their health, welfare and comfort. In spite of the euphoria of globalization, we can be reasonably satisfied that there has been continuity in maintaining validity of the strengths and resources within communities for them to achieve their needs. I trust traditional and strongly entrenched traits of volunteerism and donation as well prevalent among our people is one of the invaluable strengths we have, though our resources vastly underutilized. Dear friends, we have seen the most recent experience of 5 years ago. When the tsunami hit Sri Lanka, the government had to make decisions according to governmental regulations. But the people and the voluntary organizations were moving faster to help the distress in all those villages. That is how volunteerism has played an important part in our part of the world. As the Minister in charge of water supply and drainage, I take this opportunity to invite all the participants to acquaint themselves with the experiences we have had in carrying out successive cycles of widely participatory water supply, sanitation and housing programs throughout the country. It has been acclaimed as the best practice which have been donor assisted in the initial cycle, as I said before, the community water program, with government funding, continuing with the support of the trust fund that have been created, with stakeholders representation, including local authorities and community group interests. We increasingly constraining access to depleting water resources. It has become necessary to harness every resource to reduce wastage, enhance and maintain groundwater capacities, harness rainwater, and most importantly to ensure sustained levels of sanitation. We have to have new technologies for recycling, use of treated water for drinking purposes should be given the highest priority in our programs. In effect, such approaches, which in our case are a revival of the values of our ancient hydraulic civilization, also contribute to strengthening our commitments towards green concepts and even to better benefit from carbon credit. This also validates the need for us together with our people to vigorously reinvent values and practices of our centuries of heritage to face up to the challenges of climate change, resulting in increasingly devastating and unpredictable disaster situations we are by now routinely experiencing. Sri Lanka in the recent weeks have gone through this unprecedented disaster of drought. Our agriculture in some areas of the country have totally been victim of this unexpected drought that we have faced. This is a similar situation in whole of Asia, South Asia. Dear friends, at the last Sakosan South Asia Conference on Sanitation, UNICEF and other representatives of the organization is here, held in Colombo, Sri Lanka in April 2012. We have shared our individual experience for the benefit of others and also developed finally a 13-point declaration with an end of the sessions. Declaration calls for governments, professionals, researchers, private sector and civil society to renew commitment to investing in people of South Asia through policies, programs that deliver sustainable sanitation and hygiene to all. Sri Lanka has embarked on one of the declarations by introducing a sanitation program for every school in the country. 9,700 schools have had new toilet facilities which have been upgraded with the help of UNICEF and other agencies. We welcome Abdul Latif Jamil Poverty Action Lab for organizing this conference with the global goal of facilitating partnership to evaluate and innovate solutions to the issues in urban water, sanitation and hygiene delivery for the urban poor and underprivileged. I am confident that the participants will all agree that it is not acceptable that resources necessary cannot be found to alleviate and harsh conditions of living of the poorest segments without even basic sanitation, and that continuing to ignore this reality will only drive the grossly underprivileged sections in communities to further misery. Also for governments, to save their health bill, it is high time the governments realized and gave the highest priority to these areas that has to be recognized, but also result in also mistrust, loss of confidence in systems of government would otherwise emerge. I hope that this aspect will receive utmost consideration at this conference. Once again, I wish you a fruitful and a productive conference, and I hope you will enjoy the beautiful country of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. So I'm Dr. Suman from Sulabh International. So we are inspired by your address. And sir, I want to know, sir, what is the sanitation coverage in Sri Lanka, sir?
I would like to first mention city of Colombo. As I mentioned in my speech, it's about 10 to 12% lacks access to sanitation. General sanitation figures are fairly high. It is also in the range of 60 to 70% access to sanitation.
Thank you, Minister, for being here, and it's indeed an honor for us to be hearing you here today, this morning. Minister, my question is about impact evaluations. One of the questions that we deal with when we go and speak with ministers who are, enlightened and Renaissance ministers as you, is the political acceptability of recommendations that are coming out of impact evaluations. And I was wondering if you had thoughts about how you deal with recommendations or conclusions that would come out of impact evaluations that you would then have to, talk about or disseminate or even react to and respond to in the political arena. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I would like to remind again the reference I made to the declaration of the last Sakosan conference, the 13-point declaration, which we have been canvassing heavily within our governmental establishments. I agree. Governments change very slowly. Bureaucrats also change slowly. But if we recognize the civic society and other groups and their proposals to be canvassed heavily, change can take place, for which Sri Lanka's government has now embarked on a new program of change and growth.
Thank you, sir. Your leadership in Sakosan and rainwater harvesting in the region is quite... what I was wondering that we are dealing at the SARC level with the less contentious issues like sanitation or hygiene, whereas water sharing is more political, where we don't want to bring it in a regional forum or shape. Is there any possibility that some of these contentious issues can be discussed at SARC or in any regional forum, especially this transboundary water and water sharing, which affects lives of millions of people in this region?
I would say yes. It could be taken up at a South Asian regional level, but the question is whether it should be only governmental or with participants from other organizations, local government and others, and the academia. So perhaps a new initiative could emerge from this workshop as proposed by you. I'm from Bangladesh. I think you're from Bangladesh. Yes.
Okay. If I could just make one final comment following up on Dr. Jyotsna Puri's question about the effect of impact evaluation on government, on change in government policy. So in our experience, involving government agencies in actually the carrying out of impact evaluations. So while the project is in the field, the government is a partner, an implementation partner or an innovation partner, right? So when the government itself takes the role of developing that evidence, that's typically much more persuasive for that same government agency than if the evidence is coming from outside, right? And so the approach we're trying to take here, and this was a large part of the conversation we had for half an hour or just before the minister gave his speech, is that we would like to have sort of joint innovation and joint implementation of projects such that the evidence gets developed not only for the government but also by the government. Okay, well, thank you again, Honorable Minister, for spending some time with us and for letting us know about the priorities in the sector. We're truly honored to have you here and to learn about both Sri Lanka and your sector. Thank you.